Michelle Mozes, welcome to Jewish Money Matters. I'm so excited that we get to connect today on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm definitely more excited than you.
We're girl fans here, people.
Yes.
You're listening to the audio, but if you catch the video, you'll see how excited we are to actually get to meet each other in person. Although, like, let's make that a real thing, Michelle. Can we do that
Oh
soon?
yeah, I'm down. You tell me when and where. I am there.
I
Let's
think
hang
I have
out.
I think I have to come up to the Northeast because I keep getting people asking me, when are you coming up? When are you coming up? So I have a lot of reasons to come up. I just don't like the weather. So I'm going to wait on that one.
I don't blame you. I hear you.
Michelle, you're a brand strategist. You are a graphic designer. You've built a really successful brand. You have pivoted. You have an incredible journey that has taken you from, I understand you started your career writing and illustrating comics, and
Yeah.
now you help businesses grow and really do it in a very strategic way. I know that there's so many lessons that we can distill from your journey. It's a beautiful journey. It's a unique journey. So why don't we start with the journey and we'll try to distill and highlight some of those lessons along the way.
Okay, so many things happened along that path, very winding path. So yes, I was a comic book artist and I really thought I was going to work for Disney, publish my own stuff. Like I really saw that being my career. And I was so hyper focused on working for someone and getting employed, I never really thought about monetizing my work. And looking back, it hurts because I'm like, oh, I had a lot going for me, but I didn't jump on that and I didn't recognize it. I was like, oh, it's so much easier. Someone just, hires me and tells me what to do, and I'll have an editor and a publisher and live my happy life or animate for Disney. Um, so I did that, and the thing is that I was depressed. I suffered from depression for many years, from my teen years into my mid 20s.
Wow.
And I think I was looking for comic creation to fill that void for me because I felt really good drawing. It was an
Hmm.
escape. Um, but it's interesting because even when I progressed in my comic book career and I was very in the Hollywood scene and the Hollywood of comic book art, like I knew all the big comic book artists, all the big Disney artists. I was attending conventions. I went to Comic-Con. I went to the Disney Animation Studio. I did everything I had to do to succeed in that space. And I was still depressed. And I'm like, I don't understand. I visited Disney in Burbank, California today. Like,
Mm.
why am I depressed? And it never made sense to me why. And here I thought like, oh, when I get hired by Disney, I'll be so happy and life will be so perfect. And I kind of was chasing this high that I wasn't getting through anything that comics were giving me. So I was like, okay, something's wrong here, something's off. Can't put my finger on the pulse, but we're going to keep trucking forward. And the economy crashed in 2008.
Oh, yes. I
And
remember
yeah,
that well.
fun times. Yeah, well, you're in money, so you know very well, and everyone's
I
getting
thought
laid
you
off.
were much younger than I am. I'm like, how does she know? How did she know that that happened?
I wasn't even born yet. No, it's so funny. I love hearing that. You thought I was younger? Yes, let's talk about that
Yeah,
instead.
let's talk about that. I got
Right.
carded the other day, people. I got carded. I was like, ooh, I like you.
There you go. So the recession happened. I was in college. Everyone was supposed to be getting internships. Instead, they're getting layoffs. And I was like, how am I going to work for Disney like this? This is crazy. So long story short, I launched my own graphic design business because it was a lucrative thing to do. And a lot of
Hmm.
people were asking me to design stuff for them. So I was like, I'll just charge for it. And the art department at college was asking me to help them with a lot of projects, and I charged. And I wasn't charging a ton. It was $15 an hour, $16 an hour. I remember when I raised my rate to $18 an hour, and I was like, whoa, $18 an hour. I've
The
made it now.
discomfort.
Yeah. Oh my
I've made
gosh.
it.
We're going to talk more about that. But I just built this business and the demand was growing. And again, long story short, still depressed, growing this
Mm.
business. And I kind of like forgot about working for Disney. It was really very much on the back burner. It wasn't looking possible. And I didn't want to chase a fake dream. And that's how I felt at the time. So I built the graphic design thing. So now fast forward to 2019. Okay, it's pre-COVID. I didn't know COVID was going to happen, but I hit a standstill where I wasn't feeling happy. And I was like, I have to make a really big life decision here. I'm either going to continue to feel depressed and try to find the thing that's going to make me feel good and fulfilled. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of my depression, I realized later, like that year, was me trying to find my purpose and not finding it.
Yeah.
And when that clicked for me, and I realized I'm trying to seek purpose and nothing I'm doing creatively is filling that,
Mm-hmm.
something I need to find like where those are aligning. And I actually developed something called the four fulfillment factors, which not
Ooh.
only got me at, yeah, well, we can get into that too.
Oh, I want to hear about that.
Yeah, that didn't just get me out of depression, but it helped me channel my creativity in a productive way that I knew I was fulfilling my purpose. So everything started shifting in 2019 for me.
Mm-hmm.
And COVID hit, and I was a burnt out designer. At that point, I was charging $75 an hour, $100 an hour. But what happens when you start raising your hourly rate? People stop looking at your talent and they start looking at your price, and they're like, wait, why are you better than the 35 an hour designer or the $50 an hour designer? Why am I
Mm-hmm.
paying you $100 an hour? And that's when it clicked for me that I need to rebrand myself and kind of position myself as a solution to a problem instead of
Yes,
selling
yes.
services, as you know. So
Don't
I
sell
was
price, sell value. That's what we're talking about here, people.
Exactly. So I really flipped that around, but not only was I changing my prices, I started changing my mindset because at this point, I was so used to rejection and I was also so used to people just telling me to get the work done, right? Like I was rejected by Disney many times. There were layoffs back in the day and I still carried that trauma with me. Like nobody wants me as a designer, as an illustrator.
Mm.
And then I had this burnout and trauma, and then I was charging a lot for design, but people were still like, I don't care about the price. Like, can you do that cheaper? I just need it done fast. And people not seeing that value. So when I rebranded myself, I was like, what do I really, really want? I want to make an impact. I want to change people's lives. I want to show people that you can. Because here I was with the burnt out dreams, but I was like, if I could just remove all my limiting beliefs and delete them, I can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And in less than a year, I built a six-figure business because I told myself I could. And that's all it took. I mean, it took a lot of strategy too, but I never would have applied strategies or thought about the word strategy had I continued thinking, I can't, who am I? I'm just a designer. I charge
Right.
$75 an hour. I can never make more money. I really put these limiting beliefs on myself. And for years, people put those limiting beliefs on me too, because when you're a designer, a lot of people say like, oh, you can only make a certain amount. You can only make
Mm-hmm.
65,000 a year. Like you're suddenly like identifying as your profession instead of identifying as who you are as a
You
human and your
right, your
purpose.
worth, right? Your purpose, your worth. So much to distill here, Michelle. Before we get to the last piece, which is the Newsweek headline. I made 100K. I didn't have business experience. All that good stuff. Okay, the end of the story. Before we get to that, what I'm hearing here is I took responsibility. I took ownership. It's almost like there was a shift from a victim mentality of this is
Yes.
happening to me and this is just blah to no, no, no. What am I going to do to change it? Like that's really what I heard very clearly that you took ownership over this. And I think that's probably the most important piece here because we can play victim and say, oh, it's the industry, it's the clients, they're difficult, the industry's hard, nobody makes more than X. We can play that script till the end of our lives, but that, like you very well experienced, leads to a very unfulfilled life, which doesn't allow us to really express our purpose. And it's until you took that responsibility for how you're going to craft your own career, your own business, your own life, that you actually started fulfilling your purpose. So maybe take us to those four fulfillment factors because that
Sure.
is probably so good. And I bet you this one of them at least has to do with helping others. Let's hear it.
Yes. How did you know? So the four fulfillment factors, number one is knowing your why. why
Yeah.
you get out of bed every day. That was something I could not figure out for a very long time because I was reduced to a designer robotically doing designs every single day without anything tied to that.
Right.
So knowing why you get out of bed, knowing why you show up for customers, why you show up for clients as a business owner is so important, because on the days where it's really hard, you need to remind yourself why you're still doing this. And I think having that in my back pocket now has been so helpful. And it also keeps me focused, because it's like, okay, this is why I'm showing up today. This is why I'm getting dressed and putting on makeup. And when you're depressed, those things are very hard to do, you know. So though that during that time, it was like I couldn't tell you my why. But when you know what your why is, it's like, this is why I'm doing this. And it feels so good. Which takes me to
Yeah.
number two, which is
Mm-hmm.
the who. Who are you showing up for every day? Now, the who could be a few people. Who, I mean, first and foremost is your client, right? What does your client look like? Why do they need you? That comes back to that idea of positioning yourself as a solution to a problem. Especially when you're a service provider, it's hard to find that sometimes. That takes work. Sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
takes us months and months to find that. But knowing who you show up for, so you got that why, now the who, so you have like someone and purpose, someone to talk to, get up for, work for, right? That why, that who could also be your kids, your family, right? Your that could also be a why. And everything's like kind of like blending into each other,
Yes.
like the why, the who. And then that takes me over to number three, which is your impactfluence, which is a word I
Mm-hmm.
made up, but it makes a lot of sense. It's knowing how you show up uniquely and how you use your unique abilities to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people associate their unique abilities with things like, oh, I'm a graphic designer, I'm good at drawing. Well, really, those are not your unique abilities. Those are great talents to have, but you have an ability beneath that surface that can really change and impact lives. And it's really important that you find that, because when you do find that and you align that with your career and your why and your who, then you feel a sense of fulfillment and
Yeah.
everything just kind of clicks into place.
Mm-hmm.
And number four is to have a big picture goal in mind. Really know where you're headed to, and not only where, but have a very clear vision of who future you looks like. What
Mm.
do you look like in a year from now? And it's funny, I can tell you, Yael, if I picture myself in a year from now, she does not look like me. But you know what? I look really different than 3 months ago because I envisioned me now three
Mm-hmm.
months ago, and here I am. But in a year from now, she's like she's on a whole other level.
Yeah.
And you should always be thinking that way because that's giving you motivation. You're using your why, you're using your who, and now you have direction. You know where you're headed to. And the clearer you are, and then I really encourage my clients to make a vision board. Make it
Yes.
so clear and tangible. Know what you're striving for. Because without that, you have the pieces, but there's nothing driving it forward.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I feel like you were you like listening to my I just hung up. I have a business mastermind called Maximize with Joyce Azria. And I feel like we were just having this whole entire conversation. You were
really,
listening, weren't you?
I was totally there, fly on the wall.
No, this is really music to my ears. And I'll add just one thing to the first piece about your why, and that it's not just for us. You didn't say this is my, and you could disagree with me, but yes, when we know our why, it helps us get up in the morning, right? We know why we're doing what we're doing, we know why we're getting dressed, but it also helps us actually communicate our value, right? The value
Yes,
creation is so attached to the why. Once you're so clear on the why, then of course I'm creating value. And let me tell you how I create value, right?
I
They
love
really go
that.
hand in hand. They really go hand in
100%.
hand. And I'm glad you reminded us of the vision board, because I think sometimes we underestimate the power. And obviously you're a designer, so it's near and dear to you, but I'm glad you brought it to us. Tell me, just as just a little bit of an aside, do we do a vision board like with every state? Like how often do we make one?
I make one every 3 to 6 months when
Oh,
I start
oh, that
checking off my
often.
goals. Yeah. Because what happens is I have my vision board, it's my desktop screenshot in the background. And every day I take a good look at it and I'm like, what action will I take today to get closer to these goals?
Love that.
And I hit a lot of them, thank God. And now it's like, okay, let's redo this vision board. And the intention, it does change, like
Mhm.
also when you become this higher level version of you, like those goals almost like they seem small, and it's like you're now on the other side of it. So like, how can we elevate the goals? How can we
Right.
bring this up a notch?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I really love that. I love the idea. I've heard before. I've done it before, putting it on your phone, but I also like the idea
Yeah.
of putting it as a screenshot on your computer, because the truth is we do spend some, at least I do. And I'm sure being on Jewish Money Matters podcast was over there on your vision board a couple of months ago. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Definitely was.
Listen,
Wait,
Michelle.
there's one on the list.
Listen, let's dive into this radical, it's almost radical change. Like, it's like you said it. I just had to change my mindset from just being a graphic designer to CEO of my own brand. And that brought about a tremendous financial remuneration within weeks. You essentially rebranded yourself, right? And like you said in the Newsweek article, you didn't really have any formal business experience. It was
None.
more like you decided this is what you're doing. Now, help us just break it apart for us a little bit. What did that look like in terms of actions? What were the things that you were doing that were different from Michelle pre this realization?
So first of all, I started setting financial goals because I never really had
Ooh.
money goals. Because I didn't think I should. Like, who am I to have big money goals? I'll never reach them. That was old me. And then I said, okay, we're going to make 10K a month. Let's start there. Let's see how that looks. And how does that look? What actions do I need to take to get there? So I literally just wrote it down one day in my notebook and I said, okay, 10K. How many clients do I need to book if I sold, let's say, $2,500 packages? And how many clients would I need on retainer for how much money? And I started breaking things down that way. So that also helped me figure out how to put myself out there on social media and how I marketed myself, because I'm like, okay, if I have the intention to capture some leads and turn them into paying retainer clients, what do I have to say? How do I have to show up? And how am I going to do that? So that's
Right.
where the strategy played a role. And I kind of just, I really, it was a winging it situation because I didn't know what I was doing. But what I can say is that I didn't realize that this was a technique back then. But during COVID, what happened was a lot of women decided they're going to just start their own businesses because a lot of them, their husbands, and they weren't working. As mine, he was furloughed during the pandemic. So I was like, oh, I got to really like amp it up. And a lot of women were like, okay, I'm going to start my own business. Some of them were stay-at-home moms that were looking to make money. And like everyone got really creative and everyone
Mhm.
pivoted. And I kind of just positioned myself as starting a business during COVID. I'll help you get it off the ground. And I branded these businesses and I didn't realize like I'm developing an ideal customer. I'm speaking to their needs. I didn't even realize I was doing this. I kind of just did it because I saw the need for it. And it's funny because I didn't know a lot about business, but I knew how to make businesses look good. So I just positioned myself as the person who makes businesses look really good. I help these people with their launch. They at least have what they need, all the aesthetics and designs to launch. I help them with their websites also. And websites alone could be like a $5,000 package. So
Mhm.
that was just like, and all of a sudden, and I'm getting my retainer clients because a lot of these women needed ongoing designs. And before I knew it, I'm making $15,000, $20,000 a month. And I you know what? It's like weird because I had an out of body experience when this was happening because it was just kind of happening, like it's one thing when you set a strategy and you have your goals and things and you're like,
Right.
okay, I could check this off. Kind of everything just kind of exploded really quickly. And I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And 6 months in, looking back, and I also was terrible at keeping track of money. So I didn't even realize how much money I was making until like 3 months out. And I'm looking back and I'm like telling my husband, I'm like, I made $15,000 last month. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah. And I'm projected to make about 20,000 this month. And he's like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, I don't know. So it was like wild. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. No,
I
no,
got
no.
such a tangent.
Yeah. So you started, you really, I want to highlight one thing that you said that it almost could go unnoticed. Because I did ask you what you did and you started telling me what you did differently, but you
Right.
said you saw a need for it. And I
Yeah.
think this is so important. I know that many people out there see a need and they know they could fulfill it, but then there comes the, who am I to do that? There's
Yeah.
other people filling that need. There's, she does it better, right? and we don't go at it. And that makes a difference. That's where the need is there, and there could be several people who identify the need. You told me at the
Yeah.
beginning of the conversation there was a need for somebody to be talking about money in the Orthodox Jewish space, and you
Yeah.
felt that need, right? Not everybody has the wherewithal, the courage, I think would be the word, to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter what everybody else thinks, because there is somebody out there who's going to think, yes, I needed you. Thank you for showing up. And you are testament to the fact that there were people out there who said, thank you, because I need you.
Yeah. So
And
well
they were
said.
they were giving you their money because you fulfilled a need. So imagine if Michelle had, and this might have been the previous Michelle, had listened to that voice that said, "Oh, come on, there are other people that are helping people, are helping entrepreneurs start businesses. Who am I to do that? I mean, I know graphic design, but come on, really, right?" Meanwhile, you didn't listen to that, and you owned it. You said, I know you have a need. I can tell you exactly what that need is, particularly because I've been there, right? That's
Right.
also an important piece of the journey, right? Very often our
Yes.
best client is us, is
Us.
somebody just like us.
Exactly.
And so, okay, so Michelle starts doing this during COVID. Things are exploding. What happens next?
What happens next is I kept doing it because I'm like, okay, this is working. Let me keep doing this. And then, of course, my goals started getting a little bit higher and different. And I didn't know a lot about business, as we said, and I really wanted to help people on a higher level. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, how can I help people achieve success? How can I help people achieve greatness? How can I help people change their mindsets? And that's when the imposter syndrome started kicking in. And I was like, who am I
Mm.
to get on podcasts? And who am I to speak to audiences? And who am I to, and that's when I think started getting scary for me. But that's when also I was doing all these mindset exercises, and I overcame depression, by the way, because when I was helping these women launch their businesses, during COVID, I was like, wow, I'm really helping people. This is so cool. So, and suddenly I started feeling really good. I got out of bed excited, and everything was like really fun and exciting. And I had my why solidified, and my who, and my everything. Like everything was just falling into place for me. Um, but I started getting really scared of growing more.
Mm.
And that's something that I struggled with for months, but like I didn't stop making big goals. We also we bought a house that same year because I was like, okay, I'm making money. Let's put that into something. And we moved. It was like a big crazy year for us. By 2021, my whole life was different. Um, but then what happened was my youngest was diagnosed with autism.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, my business sat back because I was putting him first and I was barely working because I didn't know how. I had this mom life balance, this mom work life balance that I had to figure out and navigate. And it was very different launching things with a baby during COVID and having, help. And now it was me and figuring out how to work with my son and now also grow a business. Oh my gosh, like so
Right.
much going on. So I took a big hit. I took a big
Mm.
hit. I was not working for months. And then I was like, okay, I have to figure out how to scale again. It was like doing it all over again. But the difference is that I had the strategies the second time around. And of course, as we grow as entrepreneurs or as human beings, and we go and like that for me, like this was overcoming a challenge. It was figuring out how to balance my life and how to show up more for my son, because that was really ultimately the biggest thing that I needed to figure out. And thank God I figured out that balance. I actually built a sensory gym in our basement, and I do a lot of one-on-one work with him.
Wow.
I'm basically like his therapist. When he comes home from school, he walks in through the door at 2 o'clock, and we are like all day together. And,
Mm.
I'm not talking to clients during that time. So, 8 to 2 is my work day, and that's it. And everyone knows that. They know I'm not reachable after. So I figured out a way to scale my programs and my offerings so that I could reach many people at once. And, everything kind of just shifted. I'm no longer, helping women. I mean, I'm still helping women launch businesses, but in a totally different way. So, it's this constant growth and shift. And as we evolve as people, our brand is going to change. How we show up for other people, that's going to change, But like right now, what I want to give people more than anything is that realization that there are no limits. You know, you can always figure things out. You can always chase the dreams. You can always make it happen for you. You know, no more of these limiting beliefs and anything that's holding you back. You just got to let it go.
You know, I'm so grateful that you share the story of how you had to take a step back and really figure out now your personal life. So much of our business
Yeah.
life is us, right? We are the heart and soul of this business. And the fact that it's okay, sometimes the business has to take a sabbatical so that I can come back stronger, so that I can
Yeah.
come back with my personal life figured out in a way that I could be that entrepreneur and I could be that person for my clients. And I think the way you narrated that journey for us is beautiful, and it's an important piece of the journey that, as I think for women, I mean, it happens to everybody probably, but I think women, as because of the fact that we're wives and mothers and we have that as a primary responsibility, when we're entrepreneurs, we come up against that reality perhaps more often, perhaps in a more real way, tangible way. And it's important to know and to hear from entrepreneurs, you're going to come up against that. And that's
Yeah.
okay. You can take your time, take your sabbatical, do what you need to do. The business is going to be there. It's going to be better for the business when you actually put everything into place so that you can come back. And I think that's beautiful. So the it sounds to me like the anxiety and the depression was very much connected with that sense of purpose and that
Yeah.
ability to help other people. And it's actually so interesting to see how it evolved and you were able to overcome that. Now, as a Jewish woman, this whole time, what was the role of your faith in this journey? And this could be at many layers. I'm not just referring to the anxiety, the depression, but even with this idea of, do I really make it big? Like you said, I was scared of making it big, right? It could show up in so many ways.
Yeah.
How do you feel like your Judaism informed any of these challenges or stages?
I love that question because it really did play a big role. And I don't talk about it enough because I do take for granted that I always had a very close connection with God. And my faith has always been really strong. But I think the little things, like sometimes it's the little things, like the growing the amuna and growing the bitachon, like we forget to take a moment out of our day to
Yeah.
really strengthen that because that takes work. That doesn't get really strong
Exactly.
overnight.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I started practicing gratitude, which was like another pivotal role in me overcoming depression. And I did slip back into those familiar depressed feelings when I
Hmm.
got my son's diagnosis because I was like, how am I going to do this? Like, and
Right.
and I don't have tools. Like I didn't know anything. This was also 2 years ago, so I've learned a lot. But the first thing I did was I'm not going to let my faith in God take a step back because he got me this far. And like you said, like sometimes it's okay to just take a break. And I told myself that I'm like, if I step away from my business growth right now, nothing's going to happen because God's got me. He knows what's best for me. And this is happening now because it needs to happen. So I'm going to figure this out. And I started practicing my 5 daily points of gratitude, which I still continue to do. And it's amazing how that something so small, changing that in my day,
Yep.
suddenly all the hard things that used to make me feel like my world was crashing, I'm now kind of like, okay, but at least I have this and at least I'm breathing right now. Like suddenly like I feel like I've built this toolbox
Yeah.
where when things get hard, I just pull out whatever I need and I get through it. And it's like a forward moving direction, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, that I've definitely grown closer to God. I've always been from, and I've always felt like I can talk to God when I need to. But now it's kind of like, wow, thank you. I'm so lucky. Even when things are hard, my life's amazing. Even
Yeah.
when we get really bad news, thank you, and it's just completely changed the way I see things.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I think the gratitude piece, I don't know if we give it as much credit as it deserves, and this ability, this focus to try to bring that consciousness constantly. And it could be just journaling. It could be just take 5 minutes a day and just write the things that you're thankful for at this very moment. And I posted on social media recently because I came across this quote in Dallas when I went away a couple of weeks ago with my family. And it said, and I'm gonna butcher it, but let me see if I remember.
No judgment.
No judgment here. It's live on the air. Um, imagine Oh my gosh, what is it? Okay, I have to go to my Insta. Can you believe it, people? I have to go to my Instagram to look at the quote. Okay, fine. I'll find it for you, people. I'll find it. Okay, but it was about this idea of gratitude that you're mentioning. Here I am going and okay, here I am. Okay, imagine waking up tomorrow with only the things you thanked God for today. Oh my goodness.
It's a good one.
Can we let that sink in, right? Imagine waking up tomorrow with only the things that you thank God for today. Like we would be thanking constantly, right? Because
Hmm.
we have so much to thank for. And we wouldn't leave time for the complaining and the whining and like we wouldn't leave space in our life for that.
Yeah.
And what I heard from that answer, honestly, was again, I circled it in my paper responsibility, no victim
Yeah.
mentality, right? I
Yeah.
heard it time and time again. And I think that's just such an important piece of the journey and that we have to know as entrepreneurs. And look, it's a life lesson. It's not just entrepreneurs, it's just a recipe for life, taking
Yeah.
responsibility, being grateful, knowing that God has your back, right? And gratitude and bitachon go hand in hand. We trust him. We are constantly grateful to him, and that builds our trust. Now, going to the women who you serve, we've talked
Yes.
about your journey, your challenges. Maybe tell us a little bit about the things that you're seeing, the most common struggles that you see women facing as you're coaching them in their business growth.
It's interesting. I was actually just doing research on this because I'm like, okay, what's the common denominator? Because there's always one, always.
Yeah.
And I realized that it's not just like, oh, I'm starting a business, strategies. It's always, I just went through something really big. I have changed. How do I get my branding to reflect the new version of me? And not
Oh.
everyone can actually say this, like they don't realize it. But I started to notice that this is happening across the board with my clientele. And I'm like, that's so interesting because I just went through that. And it's really um, what happens is like when we launch a brand, it reflects us. Like even
Hmm.
when clients of 2020 came to me and they wanted a logo with this color and that flair, um, we want a piece of us in it. And even beyond the aesthetics, we want us and our brand, right? Whether you're building a personal brand or you're selling a product, there's a piece of us in it. But what happens when that piece of us becomes a new version of us? It
Hmm.
no longer aligns. So people come to me when they're like, there needs to be a shift. I'm not feeling my brand right now, but I don't want to change my business. So how
Right.
do I show up as this new version of me and still maintain my brand identity? It's a great question, right?
It's
Like I
great.
don't
Yeah.
so that was something I've dealt with. And it's funny because I just did a rebrand a couple of years ago after I became this new version of me after the move. So it was like I rebranded, then I rebranded again. And it's just finding that connection, like rekindling that connection with our brand.
Hmm.
And it's okay. And I think a lot of women need to hear this always. It's okay if your audience changes because you changed.
Mm.
And if you need to reach a newer audience or if your business grew, it's okay if things start changing in your business. It's okay if your offers are new. It's okay if your prices went up. It doesn't have to be the same. You can change your business. You can
Yeah.
change the way you are in your business. So, and then the question becomes, well, what changes am I making? What are they going to look like? And that's where I come in and help them with the coaching.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm glad you talked about that. We were just having this conversation inside Maximize. Like, it's okay to pivot. It's
Yeah,
okay to pivot. Go for it. Own
definitely.
it. Own it. And you know you're not married to your price. Just because it was the price 3 months ago, a year ago, whatever it was, doesn't mean it's going to be that price forever.
Yeah,
Go ahead and
exactly.
change it. You own your business. You can do whatever you want.
And by the way, you can even lower your prices. When I started coaching and I didn't know what I was doing, I've only been coaching for a few years. So 3 years ago, when I decided I'm going to be a coach, I charged very little for it. Up when it was up against my branding packages, I was losing money because when people booked me for coaching instead of branding. I was like, oh no, I'm not reaching my monthly goals. What's going on? But
Mm-hmm.
I figured out how to coach. I figured out who my client was because I started low and then I built and then I figured out where I need to get to. So sometimes, like, change could look really different for everyone. You
Yeah.
can test and that's okay. I'm a huge fan of testing.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of testing too. And something that I'm curious your take on it. As a brand strategist, you might have a little bit of a different take, or you might be able to maybe refine my take on this one. I often see that when people are starting, what because they're being held back by all those limiting beliefs that you talked about before. Who am I to do this? There's no money in this. How could I charge? Blah 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 blah. They start hiding behind brand. And
Yeah.
so instead of talking about the problem that they're here to serve, they start fussing with colors and fonts and things that are very important. I'm not saying they're not important, but they're not as important as you getting in the face of your client and getting
100%.
so clear and articulate on how you can help them, how you've identified their need. So give me your take on that, because I'm sure there's some way to balance this, but I always caution people because I see it time and time again. So what do we say to that?
I agree with you. And I actually won't take on clients now who are just launching because I want them to get comfortable being them without the logo to be their crutch. And they'll come to me, they're like, but I can't run a business. I don't have a logo. I don't have a face of
Right.
my brand. And I'll be like, just go run your business without it. See how it feels. That's running
Exactly.
a business. A logo
Ex
is not a business.
Yes, thank you. Michelle Mozes herself said it, people.
Just
Thank you so
piggybacking
much.
on what you said, but you're totally 100%. We
And you know
cannot
what?
use the logo
Yeah,
as a
we
crutch.
cannot. We cannot. And even somebody said to me recently, but I don't have a website. I don't want you to have a website, because you know what? You're still going to evolve. You're going to evolve so many times, but you're only going to evolve if you're out there taking action. It doesn't happen if you're sitting here in your box. It only happens with the action. So one day you'll have the website. You don't need the website to go serve people, to go help them.
Yeah, 100%. Figure out your
Yeah.
messaging first. Know what you're
Yes.
showing up for, know who you're helping, and then you can have all the bells and whistles, but get your business up and running at least 3 months. Know what you're doing.
Yeah. So Michelle, going to the financial piece, you started making money, like you said at the beginning, you didn't have clear financial goals. You started making goals. You weren't really tracking your money, but then you started tracking your money and you guys decide to buy a house. I'm curious, while this is all happening, what were the conversations between you and your husband now that this revenue is coming in? What were the type of, I guess, the conversations, the new way of looking at a new maybe financial reality? Can you give us a little insight into what that was like?
Well, there was a lot of conversation revolving around investing because when you have
Hmm.
money, I'm a big fan of investing it. For me, that could also look like hiring help with my business, getting a coach and taking things to the next level. Could be a house. It was like I said, it kind of was such a blur that it took me time to look back and say, like, oh my gosh, what did I do?
Hmm.
But I think like the first thing we said was we need to move because there were many reasons why we needed to move. And really a lot of the conversation was just we need to buy a house. If we can afford it, let's just do it. And let's figure everything else out after. So that was really like the main
The big
goal.
one. Hmm.
Yeah. And it was just like, let's get out. And it wasn't even a financial decision. It was first of all, the market was insane. This was back when there were bidding wars,
Oh my gosh,
so
yes.
yeah, and that was like I thought like this is forever. The housing market, the world is going to be nuts, but and mortgage rates were low, and we're like, this is the time. There's no other time. So we're lucky that the time frame of things worked out for us, but that was really like the main goal was just
Hmm.
let's just invest this now
Hmm.
and have a house. Let's do it. So that was it.
Yeah. And what about today? What are some of the newer goals, let's say?
So really just educating ourselves on investing and
Very good.
yeah, we're big fans of saving. And it's funny, like talking about money and money mindset, it took me a long time to even like forgive myself when I spent because the piece
Wow.
of the money mindset that was a huge transformation for me was that every time I spent money, I felt like I was letting go of it. I worked so hard for it. Now it's
I won't
leaving
have it
me.
anymore. Right.
Exactly, which I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yes.
And it took a long time for me to be like, it's ever flowing. I made
Yes.
it once, I can make it back. It's all good, you
Mhm.
know? So, so in those early days of, investing, buying a house, it was kind of like, we got to put the money somewhere. And now that I'm older and years have passed, it's kind of, and it's 3 years, but it feels like an eternity. I'm like, okay, we should really invest and let the money grow and let's save and be responsible, And now also as kids get older, things start like bar mitzvahs, college, like these
For
things,
sure.
yeshiva, like these things start to take precedence
Yes.
and priority. And I'm just thinking differently as the kids get older, the expenses start to change.
Yeah.
So that's like basically where we're at with that, just making sure
Yeah.
we're being wise with investing.
I think it's very wise that you're thinking in that, and it's good that you already have that. I guess that that ability to save. Like sometimes we come at it, not know. I wasn't a saver by nature. I am now, but I trained myself to be a saver and an investor. Um, and it was a big change. But if somebody is used to saving, you could say the downside is maybe it came from a place of scarcity, as you sort of
Mhm.
described before, but there is an upside to that. And this is the perfect segue to my question about your upbringing, because you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, one of the very first things you said was about you always saw yourself as working for somebody else. You never envisioned you had this talent, you created these comics and all these things, but you thought you were meant to work for somebody else. That was the paradigm, that was the vision. Talk to us a little bit about, I'm assuming that might have come from your upbringing, maybe not, but tell us a little bit about what was your upbringing like when it came with regards to money, with regards to making a livelihood. What are some of the lessons that you learned in your parents' home, whether for good, not so good, but that you feel that really have had an impact in the way you relate to money and making a livelihood?
So there were two interesting influences in my life. There were my parents and then my friends in school.
Okay.
And my parents, they had decent jobs, but money was not talked about, like I never heard we don't have enough or that's too expensive. Those words never came out of my parents' mouth.
That's a
Um,
good thing.
it is a good thing. But like my mom was very into protecting us that we never felt
Mm.
like we never like we should never feel like we never have enough. We should always feel abundant. And she was very into that as a mindset and like literally speaking like, oh yeah, we're good. Like, oh, that, like it was never, oh, that dress is too expensive. You can't get it. It was
Mhm.
always, oh, you're gonna wear it. Okay, great. Let's get it. It was always it was kind of like this mentality of like there will always be more.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, Now when I pursued art, I was very young, by the way, when my first comic got published. I was 14. And I was
Wow.
like, I call it like child actor syndrome, where I was very famous, very young, behind a pen name. So no one knew my face, but people knew my work. Like if you had Googled me back then, I was the top of Google, but Google is not as big as it was now. But I really, I was talking about being an artist. It was something that I knew I would pursue, but then people around me, like the teachers in school, my friends, a lot of people would say, but you can't make a lot as an artist. You could be
Yeah.
famous, but you can't be rich. And I heard that a lot growing up. And then when it came time to apply to college and I knew that I wanted to pursue art because this was very obviously my career, I heard a lot of, well, art doesn't really make money. Maybe go into psychology or something and open your own practice. And I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. So there was, and my parents were super supportive. They were like, go all in on the art thing. They never questioned if I was going to make money or not,
Wow.
but it was, the principal in school who would, call me to the office, like, what are you hoping to do? Which college are you applying to? You're not really going to make money that way. How are you going to support
Oh,
a family?
I can't.
And yeah, it was very hard to hear that because it was like here I grew up in this like sheltered environment where I was told I could be anything I want to be. And then I went out into the real world and everyone's like, no, you can't. That's not how life works. And I really believed it, you know? And my friends were real professionals. You know, they all pursued major
Real
degrees.
professionals.
Yeah,
Airplane.
I mean, they here I was with my art degree and they're like becoming doctors and nurses and I really felt inferior. I was
Right.
like, how am I going to make a career out of this? Maybe they were right, you know? And when you hear something enough, you start to believe it. And I really thought like, okay, like there's just this is it. I'll just work for someone, I'll get a decent job and I'll be an artist and that's it. I never in my wildest dreams imagined that one day I would run a business on my own. But, you know, it, I wish someone had told my 15-year-old self that it was possible, you
Right.
know? I just
Right.
wish.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so beautiful that your parents had that perspective. And I cringe every time I hear career counselors and staff in school who
Yeah.
don't and instill this in kids because honestly it's fundamental to Judaism. Like open the third chapter of the Gate of Trust and it's clearly spelled out. So clearly spelled out. You pursue a livelihood based on three things. I'm going to say them so everybody memorizes them, guys: your nature, your inclination, and your tolerance. You don't pursue it based on where am I going to make money. Now, that doesn't mean that the money is not important. It means that I recognize that the vessel for my livelihood is not what's going to give me the money. It's God. And God is saying, oh, I created you in a certain way that you have a nature towards to first built for something. You have an inclination for something and a tolerance for something. That's what I'm telling you. Go there and I'll send the money there.
I
Wow, it's
love
like a
it.
recipe for success. And here we are teaching our kids. Who knows? It's just so destructive. It makes me crazy.
Yeah, it was really hard living through that. And like, I feel bad that it took me so long to learn otherwise, but I'm glad I reached this point because I discovered that I can use my innate skills. Like we said, it's not the talent on the surface, which a lot of
Yes.
people confuse, but it's using that innate ability to help others in order. And that's where the sense of purpose and fulfillment came from. And that's why I'm not depressed anymore because I
Mm-hmm.
truly know it's not like, oh, I think, no, I know I'm helping people and I'm changing lives. And anyone is capable of doing that. You know, like anyone can impact others. And I think it's so important to find what that uniqueness is. What is that impactfulness that you have on
Mm-hmm.
other people? And you're already differentiating yourself and branding yourself by using that.
Yeah, and maybe let's distill that a little bit, a little bit more for people because it is hard. And you know, we throw these words and we say, yeah, these three elements are in the Gate of Trust, and find your impactfulness, and all these things. But as you said, you went through a journey and it wasn't in just in the drawing. There were many pieces. It wasn't just having that one talent. There were many pieces that kind of you needed to craft together that were in your toolkit. Hashem gave them to you, right? And
Right.
we kind of have to put the pieces together. And it takes action, by the way. It doesn't take thinking, it takes doing. That's my that do more than you think. Um, but but maybe help us because a lot of people get stuck there. How do I find that purpose? Like, what are some practical things that you can have, like, tell people that they can do?
Okay, so it goes back again to the four fulfillment factors, but I'll go into another thing. So first of all, you know, like when I was doing comic art and not feeling fulfilled, the reason why, like when I think back on that, it's because those four factors were not aligned. So I had my why, love drawing. It brought me a lot of fulfillment, made me feel really good, except I didn't have a who. The
Right.
audience didn't matter to me so
It made
much.
me feel good, right? It's
Exactly.
a
There was
hobby. It's a hobby. It was for
exactly.
you.
Exactly. So there was no who involved there, and there was no greater picture goal
Mm-hmm.
because I knew one day I just wanted to keep doing comic art, but there was no like, what's the next level? How do I take
Right.
that further? You
Right.
know? So it's really looking into those four factors and seeing how you can get them all aligned. Because if one is missing, everything implodes. And I've done like a lot of creative stuff throughout the years. I actually had a YouTube series that was very successful, very similar to a podcast where I would interview Jewish women on their careers. Except I was missing that impactfulness factor. I didn't know how to bring myself into it and
Mm.
how to use my uniqueness. So I gave people the floor and the stage and I produced something, but I wasn't utilizing what I'm good at in that. So that was down. So I stopped the show because I was feeling empty inside and I
Wow.
couldn't keep moving forward with it. So when one of those things are not in sync, everything's going to feel off. So it's really important to figure out what are you doing now, and do those four factors match with what you're doing, and does it make you feel fulfilled? And if the answer is no to any of those, like I'm not doing that, or I can't see that, or that's not tangible to me, then it's time to take a step back and ask, is what you're doing now, is what you're pursuing the right thing? Can you add more to it, or find a way to implement one of these four factors so that you are finding your purpose? Now, to answer your question about finding your purpose, because that's how you could see if you have or have not found it. But what about the actual action steps toward finding your purpose? I think a lot of our history gives us insight into where we can go forward. And looking at where people have asked you for advice, where people have asked for help.
Yeah.
Um, these are little hints, or like, were you like a chesed girl in high school? Like, where did you feel good, and where were you needed, and where did you fill a void? And a lot of people have done this in their teenage years and kind of know, but they're not actually like working on that. Or what did you want to be when you grew up? It's funny, I wanted to be a teacher. And for years, I was like, how am I implementing teacher into my career? And then it
Right.
wasn't until I started coaching that I was like,
Ah, the
okay, I
teacher,
get
right?
it. Yeah.
Same. Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's a lot of that, those hints in our history.
Yeah, and I think something that I often tell people to do is literally pick up the phone or send a text and ask five good friends, when you think of me and you think of like, what do I come to Yael for? Like, what are the things that you know you would come to me for? And you're gonna get a lot of insights into that. And you might even see that the answers kind of match. It gives you
Yeah,
a hint. And it's actually a very beautiful exercise because we don't know, like we don't see ourselves the way others see how we feel a need in their space, right? And
100%.
and often things come so naturally to us that, and this goes back to that pricing thing that we sort of touched upon, right? And you've probably seen it a lot where because it comes so naturally to you, you don't even feel like, well, what am I to charge for this, right? And I'm like, no, no,
Yes.
no, that's exactly what you need to be charging for it. That's exactly how Hashem made you so good at it. Because guess what? The other 90% of the population are willing to pay for it because they don't know how to do it. What you do so easily, they have no clue how to do it. That's why you need to be charging for it.
Yes, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. It's so true. And I think that, money is tied to the impact that we make, right? It's not
A
just the tangible
hundred
items
percent.
that people walk away with, but what are those long-term things that we're giving people? And it's really important to think about that and know what that is.
Yeah, 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 100%, 100%. Michelle, I'm sure you're familiar with, I always like to do what I call Jewish Money Matters fill in the blanks. And this is the part of the show where I'll give you an open-ended sentence and you'll finish it with the first thing that comes to mind. All right?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So when I give Meiser or Tzedakah, I like to give to
Okay, it's a toss-up between Hatzalah and Bikur Cholim.
beautiful. Both are very, very beautiful. Yeah, very
Yeah, those are
nice.
at the top of my list.
Yeah, yeah. It's such important work. It's yeah, 100%. I'd love to make more money because
So, first of all, it's a really good sign of the impact that I've made on
mm,
others. I do associate money with impact. Sorry, I'm like giving you the long answers,
yeah, no, I like
but
it.
but
Go for it.
I would want to make more money, because to me that would be a sign of growth.
Right, right, right. And I think it's such an important word. Let's say it again. It's impact, right? The money reflects an impact that we're creating in the world, how much impact we can create. And I think often we have this negative association with money. And if we can reframe that and see that the money allows me to create so much positive impact in the world. And again, it comes from it's a value exchange. I'm delivering a value and
Yes.
people give me these certificates of appreciation with president faces on them, and that's how I turn around and create tremendous amount of impact. Not just it's not even just it's the value that I created for that customer, but then it's everything else. It's a ripple effect all around, everything I could create with the money that I receive. So all that to give us a really positive perspective on money. Something I wish I had learned about money growing up is
You could always make more.
yeah. Yeah. I,
I
I
wish
think
I
it's
knew
a
that.
I think it's a big one. It's like, oh, once it clicks that, oh, it's coming from Hashem, it's not coming really from me. Like, it's not like that self-reliance. Like, if I don't work these hours, then I won't have money. If I don't, right? No,
Yep.
actually, no, you don't really need to like struggle so hard. It doesn't have to be that hard. But if it's in alignment, which is what you help people do, then it just flows because it's an constant flow. Hashem doesn't just stop it from creating. Yeah, he doesn't just stop creation of like it's just he doesn't just stop the air from being here or the water from being here. It's just always here, right?
That was so good, Yael. I love that. Yes, it's ever flowing. I love that.
It's ever flowing. I always say it's a flowing body of water. It's not a lake, it's not static. It's just flowing. All right, money, spiritual or physical?
It's a physical embodiment of something spiritual.
Yep, 100%. Something I splurge on unapologetically is,
Practical house items.
ooh, yes, tell me, what's your favorite?
I just got this dryer rack like for my laundry room and it like pulls out of the wall and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It was like $75. Like it's worth every penny if I don't have to run up and down the steps to hang my wet laundry.
Very nice. Yes, yes. Things that make our life easier. That's worth splurging on, right? And
Yes.
plus if it's well designed, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly.
Michelle, spender or saver?
I guess saver.
Yeah, you
I
told
don't
us
know. Could
before,
ask my
right?
husband. He might tell you I'm spending a little more than usual lately, but if you're asking me, saver.
Is he also a saver?
Yes, very much so. He's not I would not define him as a spender at all.
Right, right. Yeah, mine either. Today I'm most grateful for.
Everything I have. I stop thinking about what I don't have. Everything I have, I am so grateful for every single little thing.
I think that you just said right there is just is such a big mindset shift, and it's I would venture to say that it's also been a big part of your shift as a business owner. You just said it right there. I don't focus on what I don't have. Um, and I think it's something that if we could, again, going back to that conversation on gratitude, if we can all try our best to do that, I can't even tell you, I see it time and time again. I bring gratitude into all my coaching programs. It's such a big part of it because
Yeah.
I know how it changes people's life. I just
Yeah.
see it. I just see it. All right. Finally, I'm Michelle Mozes, and I believe Jewish money matters because,
Money reflects the impact that we make, and we can always make lots of impact and lots of money.
yes, amen to that. And God wants us to make a lot of impact. That's why we're here.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we have a job to finish, people. So let's go make that impact and go make them go generate value, go create impact, go make them money. Michelle Moses, where can people find you? Tell us about what you're offering clients at the moment if they want to work with you. Tell us all about that.
If you want to feel more aligned with your branding, you can work with me either via coaching or I can do your designs for you. You can find me at michellemozes.com. Moses is with a Z, Mozes. You can also find me on Instagram, Michelle Moses.
Beautiful. Michelle, it was such a pleasure to have this conversation. I feel like we
Same.
could go on for 2 hours. We would
For
become
sure.
having a great time together. I must come up to the Northeast and everybody
Yes.
stay tuned for the pictures on that.
Thank you
Mich-
so much. Yeah, this was so much fun.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you for the beautiful work that you do.
Thank you.